Okay, so it's not a story anymore using story grammar marker for expository and informational text. Sorry about that, but I forgot to start recording. So Mary Ellen will respond to questions at the end unless it's something that really is pertinent that you need to tell us right in the middle. Please don't hesitate to ask the question whenever you think of it. I will be monitoring those, so please ask. At the end of the webinar, close to 7:25 or so, we'll be raffling off 3 items. And you must still be logged in order to be eligible to get one of these giveaways. So it's only going to be people who are still logged in at the end that are going to be eligible. The handouts that we put on, so that's the PowerPoint handout and one other reference handout, are also in the panel on the right under handouts. You can download those whenever you'd like. And there is a couple of other handouts that you would have gotten prior to, or you should have gotten links to prior to the webinar beginning. So I hope you have those, and if you don't, it's not a problem because we'll send those to you after if you don't have them. And then I am also going to be posting toward the end in the handout section a certificate of attendance. So that's going to be posted so that you can download that at the end to prove that you attended this hour-long webinar. So we do have a couple of polls. And hold on one second, I'm going to launch. Wait a second, I don't know if that's going to work. You know, I might do the polls at the end. I'm going to do the polls at the end because I don't know if you can see that or not, and I don't think you can. So I don't want to delay us getting into the webinar any further.
You can see it. She can see it.
Could you see the poll? Okay. Oh, I guess people answered the poll. So I guess you answered, so you could see it. Okay. So the question was, what summer webinars would you be interested in? Mary Ellen's favorite books to use with story grammar marker was the highest one. How to argue a point, perspective taking and argument writing was the second highest one, and then 6 7-minute activities to do with story grammar marker and theme maker. So that was the first poll. The second poll is, how long have you used story grammar marker? So it's either never, I'm a newbie, 1 to 2 years, I can't wait to learn more, several years, I'm an SGM groupie, or more than 10 years, I'm an SGM aficionado. And so we've got about, it's looking like about a third have never used story grammar marker or our other materials. About 40% probably have been using it 1 to 2 years. And another third, a little under a third, has been using it for several years. And about 7% of you have been using it for more than 10 years. So welcome to all of you. We are going to do enough so that I think every level of expertise in story grammar marker will be covered. And then the third poll, thank you for answering that. So I'm going to close that one. The third poll is this one. Have you used story grammar marker or theme maker with expository or information text? Yes or no? So I'm watching the numbers come in. It looks about 80% have not. So this is an awesome opportunity because we're very excited about the information we have to share with you tonight. And I think it's going to give all of you such a great foundation and some ideas also, and some lessons that you can do, and it's very exciting. So, okay. So, all right. So we're going to go back now to my screen. So Mary Ellen's going to cover her bio in a little bit in her introduction. So I'm not going to read this because you're going to have it in your handout and you'll be able to read it later on. What I'm going to do instead is get to the meat of the presentation. So, like I said, welcome. Here is Mary Ellen Rooney Morrow, creator of Story Grammar Marker, and she actually created Theme Maker, which is the expository text component, right about when I graduated from college. I actually had some graphic design work that I helped her with the initial manual, which was kind of cool. I had a crash course in 1995. So without further ado, I'll give you over to Mary Ellen, and we will get started.
Thank you very much, Sheila. And thanks to Sheila Zabula for her help in organizing this as well today. So what you see on the screen now is a diagram of the Story Grammar Marker. And for those of you who are new to it, I'm just quickly going to go through it. It's a hands-on multisensory tool for modeling and practice. And that's what we want to do with our students. The character is the pom-pom. The setting is a star for where and when, but it's much more than that, and we'll talk about that tonight. It can also be an era in history or a time in the science experiment. The kickoff is the initiating event, and it's a shoe because one of the kids early on when we were starting to use it, and at first it was a big green button that meant go, but this boy came in one day and he said, you know, that's just like a kickoff at a football game. He was watching Monday Night Football with his father, and he said the characters are all lined up in the field and nothing happens until the kickoff. The kickoff is followed by the internal response or the feeling, very important in social communication, mental states or the thinking verbs that modify our thought and modify our feelings. The plan is a hand, meaning to stop, think, and make a plan. The planned attempts are the way we get to the consequence. Once we make a plan, we do certain things, which lead us to the consequence of the story. And then at the end, we have the resolution or the feeling. Now, this is the basic unit of a plot. It's also the problem-solution text structure in information text. And I'm going to get to that in a little bit. By 1995,
there's a little strangeness with
excuse me a minute.
Audio, so hold on a second.
Is this better with the audio now?
Yes.
Much better? Okay. Great. All right, so by 1995, because the Story Grammar Marker was created in 1991, and by 1995 it was evident to me, because I was working in a school for children with dyslexia that was located on a college campus here in western Massachusetts. We're 90 miles west of Boston. And at that time, it was very important, I thought, to do something about expository text structures, because even though my students were not supposed to have a comprehension issue, many of them had problems expressing what they comprehended. So if I wasn't there to ask every question, it was a problem to them. And I felt that the icons on the Story Grammar Marker would trigger the questions that ultimately they would ask themselves. So I thought, how could I now apply the SGM icons and methodology to expository text structure? So I thought about it, and I realized that when text gets more and more complex, the structure is really no longer what happens when it's no longer a narrative text. And it brought me back to my childhood, and I have these 3 front pages of 3 newspapers. I come from a newspaper family. My father was a correspondent for the Springfield newspapers here. One of his brothers, my Uncle Emmett, established and created the Ludlow Register. And another brother, Davitt, in Palmer, bought and developed the Palmer Journal Register. So we're all interested in what I think is information text. And every time growing up, when the phone rang and my parents weren't home, it was up to one of us children to answer the phone and take the message. So it's back. Okay. I'm sorry about, this is an initiating event. We have something like the audio going off. What is expository text? So I hope that you heard me talk about my family background in the area of newspaper writing, because it ties into my interest in information text. So what is expository text? In schools, we call it information text or nonfiction. And it's found in textbooks such as history, social studies, science, technology. Expository text is very important for organizing and comprehending news articles, textbook chapters, experiments, research papers. It's even on the back of cereal boxes, so we can get a start on that in the morning if we want. There are 7 basic expository or informational text structures, and those are description, listing, sequencing, cause-effect, which is a big one, problem-solution, compare-contrast, and persuasion or argument. Why do we teach it? Well, one of the reasons I thought it was important to teach it was the research of Jean Chall that I had read as a teacher of children who are having difficulty reading. It prevents the 3rd and 4th grade slump. The 4th grade slump is when information text gets introduced very quickly. So it's great that we're introducing it at lower grade levels. The focus on argument in the curriculum as well as the Common Core, that is a reason for teaching expository text structures. And also to comprehend, write, communicate, and critically think about science, social studies, biographies, magazine articles, directions, cookbooks, and of course websites. In all my webinars and workshops, I present this model of the building blocks of oral language because as a speech language pathologist for 45 years, I've been immersed in oral language development and the strands of oral language development. Those of you who've used Story Grammar Marker for a long time know that the braid represents these strands of language and how they affect each other and develop at various times. So the strands of language would be pragmatics, phonology, semantics, syntax, and discourse. Discourse is what we're doing tonight. One aspect of discourse, which would be exposition. And these arrows that go both ways are part of the oral literate continuum focused on by Carol Westby in many of her articles, with the narrative as being the driving text structure. The better you are at narrative, the better your conversation's going to be. And the better you are at problem solution of the complete episode of a narrative, the better you are at solving problems in expository text. And I wanted to mention that it's not only text structure that can be worked on, but as we're going to show tonight, you can pull in your intervention in sentence structure and in vocabulary into this as well. So the text structures that we're going to pay attention to tonight are those in the circle. We've just mentioned them. They begin at description and end at argument and persuasion. To argue and persuade, you have to be aware of the needs of your listener. In other words, you have to be able to take perspective, which we spend a lot of time on in narrative development. So as I, way back in 1995, was looking for evidence of information text, I came across one of my favorite books called Stellaluna by Janelle Cannon. And I was attracted to that at first because Stella is star in Latin and Luna is moon. And it was about a bat, so I was intrigued to see what was going to happen. And as I read the book for the story, the narrative about the little bat who got separated from her mother, I realized that it also contained a compare-contrast multiple times about birds and bats, how they were alike and how they're different. That brought me to looking more in depth at information picture books, and I came across Gale Gibbons' books. The first one I came across was one about sea turtles, and I had begun to do some work in Florida, and it was very important that I have information on sea turtles. Tonight, we're going to talk about alligators and crocodiles, particularly crocodiles. So it's another one of Gale Gibbons' books. Her books contain beautiful pictures and very short text that's to the point. So this is the Theme Maker. The Theme Maker is our manual, written in 1995 and revised a couple of times to reflect information text. These are the text structures that accompany the Theme Maker tool. And as you see, the icons from the Story Grammar Marker have been repurposed to represent this kind of text. The purpose is different. The purpose is to gather, express, and document information. It's not to tell a story specifically. So Sheila said to me the other day, "Mom, why did you call it the Theme Maker anyway? Why didn't we call it Expository something?" Well, at the time, everybody used to write their essays in these theme pads. And I wrote essays, I took notes, I handed in things to my teachers. So I called it a theme maker because in those times I was using information text. And it came to Sheila's mind the Christmas story that is, of course, a tradition, and stars Ralphie and his teacher, Miss Shields. And I'd just like you to listen to Miss Shields as she gives the directive to the students about writing a theme and their reaction.
Oh, wait a minute. Shoot. Could you hear that? Ask if they could hear it.
Could you hear it?
Okay. Okay, hold on. Turn the volume back on. Sorry about that.
Now, boys and girls, I'm going to give you an assignment. I want you to write a theme.
And of course, Ralphie.
Yeah, okay. Just a minute.
So here's Miss Shields. I'm sorry about that, but I'm sure it will work out fine. A theme, and her title of the theme was What I Want for Christmas, and there's Ralphie. He is going to be writing about his Red Ryder BB gun that he would like for Christmas. Ralphie expects to get an A+ on his theme. So this is what Ralphie wrote.
Okay, see if it works. Say I'm sorry.
All right, I'm sorry about that, but we'll just continue. So this is Ralphie's theme, and you'll see that he got a C+ on it when he was readily expecting an A+. What I want for Christmas is a Red Ryder BB gun with a compass in the stock and the thing where you tells time. And he thought that there were 3 reasons for it. He gave 3 opinions. Everybody should have a Red Ryder BB gun. They're very good gifts for Christmas, and I don't think that a football is a very good Christmas present. Okay, so Miss Shields didn't think it was A+ work. What would have given Ralphie an A+ on his theme? It would have maybe gotten an A+ if he maybe had listed the items he wanted other than that one. Maybe he would describe them using juicy adjectives. Maybe he would compare and contrast them by saying some items are better than others because. Maybe he would talk about a problem that it would solve. Maybe there would be less bickering with his sibling, or he'd have more interests if he got this particular thing. Maybe he would make an argument, reasons why this is the best gift. Maybe he'd take the perspective of his parents, cite facts and evidence. Maybe he would present cause-effect in the situation. If I get this gift, maybe then I will be happy. So, in other words, if he had included, as we chuckled about it today, if he had included more text structures, it probably would have brought his theme up to an A+. Well, when I was beginning to go about doing this, I used some Dr. Seuss-like books. And for those of you who don't know, Theodore Geisel was born in Springfield, Mass. And the map that's on your screen now shows a 2-minute drive to Mulberry Street from my office. And his book, To Think That I Saw It on Mulberry Street, is a list of things that he saw on Mulberry Street. So here I am, right on Mulberry Street with Brady and the story grammar marker one day.
So sorry.
We're having some glitches with some of our things tonight. Okay, so there I am at Mulberry Street. But expository text with the curriculum, there's more of, is a camel a mammal?
Yeah.
That.
Oh, God.
Oh.
Hold on. I'm sorry. Sorry about this. We got a whole new system and thought it was going to be even more perfect, and we've tested it multiple times, and naturally when you're all in front of us, we're having trouble.
So now we're solving our problem though, or problem solution structure.
It's a positive way to look at a rather stressful
situation. All right, so the book that I mentioned is A Camel, a Mammal. is expository text in a poem for very young children. And I'm going to quickly just read through, and I'm going to tell you in advance that this page is a list. So I'd like you to just process the list in your head. I'm the Cat in the Hat, and I'm writing a book. It's all about mammals. Come on, take a look. From the fruit-eating bat to the smart chimpanzee, from the moles in their holes to the seals in the sea, from raccoons to baboons. I'll show them to you, and your mother will not mind at all if I do. So there's a list of 6 animals, and they're pictured there as well. The next page, all mammals breathe air and are warm to the touch. Mammals grow hair, some a lot, some not much. Their hair can be soft like the fur on a kitten, or wool from a lamb you knit into a mitten. Their hair can be hard, like the small hedgehog spines, or the dangerous quills on these 2 porcupines. So this is a compare-contrast. Mammals live on cold mountains and hot burning sand, down deep in oceans or out on dry land. They hop and they jump and they swim or glide high on the breeze. They can walk, run and climb or swing up in the trees. They're full of surprises, of that I've no doubt. Is a camel a mammal? Read on to find out. So in these first pages, there's lists of things that they do. There's lists of places that they live. There's comparing and contrasting among them, and there's a list of just basic mammals. So any of these books can be used with young children just to identify text structures, and you can just say offhand, this is a list, this is a sequence. But expository text in the curriculum is much more complex than it is in picture books, and you can kind of tell by this montage here. When we talk about environmental crises, disasters, global warming, hurricanes coming, economics, science, any of those things are very deep, and as are the lives of our world leaders. So as the curriculum becomes more complex, expository text becomes more prevalent, and it is technical, it's abstract, it's dense in its sentence structure, it's complex, it's downright alienating to many students, has technical academic vocabulary, and the sentences, instead of being simple or compound sentences, have lots of embedded clauses. So expository text I found when I was working with children with difficulty with the text, with reading, presents additional comprehension obstacles for struggling comprehenders. Expository genres are written to provide information in addition and verses telling a story, and the patterns in which authors organize their ideas differ depending on their purpose and the specific content area, reflecting specific disciplines. And there's a lot of research on something called disciplinary literacy. It's that the writers in different disciplines use those 7 text structures, but they use them differently. So good readers and writers of expository text can do all of these bulleted things, which I'm not going to read. I just have them here so that you could share them if you were doing a collaboration with another colleague about why to use ThemeMaker, why to use expository maps, and why to teach it explicitly and how to practice it. A skill that's important for constructing a coherent model of the text meaning is the knowledge and use of text structure. Knowledge and use of text structure is extremely important. Knowledge of both narrative and expository structures emerges in preschool with description, but is refined over many years through exposure, genres, and extensive reading. Here is the ThemeMaker tool. And the ThemeMaker tool is, I showed it before a couple of minutes ago. It has the structures that I've been talking about: description, compare, contrast, list, sequence, cause, effect,
I don't know why that's
Problem solution.
looking like that.
There's a little bit of a problem, a glitch with this. Problem solution, persuasion, compare, contrast.
We're gonna show
And
it again anyway.
those of you, we'll be showing that again, but those of you who have been to a workshop that we've given or have been on other webinars have seen us present the 7 stages of narrative that are written in language development textbooks. And these 7 stages build upon each other so that kids can, over time, become efficient storytellers and comprehenders. So there's one text structure in narrative that we want every child to master, and that is the complete episode, because that's a tie-in to information text. It is the same structure as Abraham Lincoln used, as a scientist might use when he comes across a problem, or somebody in your neighborhood might use in solving a problem that is not particularly a story, but an expository event. So here's descriptive. Compare, contrast. List,
I don't know why it's
sequence. I don't know why it's doing this in green. Cause, effect, problem, solution, and notice that it's the kickoff, the feeling, the plan, the ways to get to the consequence, and the consequence. At the bottom of each one, you'll notice that there's an author's plan there, so that kids will know that an author who is using a problem solution text structure is trying to identify a problem and offer a plan to solve it. The final 2 are persuasion and argument. And I just might make a little differentiation between the 2. Persuasion especially depends on feelings and emotion, whereas argument depends on thought. So, bringing those 2 sequences together, the developmental sequence of narrative, which is on the left, and the types of expository text, which are on the right, I just wanted to show you a way that we developed at the Curtis Blake Day School, where I was, to teach expository text along with narrative development. So if a child is able to give you the character and the setting in a story, we found that he could probably identify the character and the setting in an expository text book or video at his age level or grade level. He could probably begin to compare and contrast, because children's books and children compare and contrast many times. In fact, my 3-year-old granddaughter Casey saw someone this morning walking on her street with a large and a small dog, and she said, "Nana, that's a big and a little puppy." So what was she doing? She was contrasting, and I'd venture to say she was beginning to use expository text. So then, if we're working on that and the kids are in school, we can use a descriptive character map similar to this that are contained in our Theme Maker manual. So this is a descriptive character map. I just wanted you to notice that the key words, which teachers often have children use to identify text structures, are in a box on each of the maps. And this is one about characteristics of vertebrates. You'll notice that on our maps, the topic sentence is at the bottom, because in our work, or in my work, I found that children could only begin to formulate a topic sentence after they had known about the topic. This is a compare-contrast, the northern and southern colonies. If the child is able to give you an action sequence, a character, setting, and a group of actions, he should be able to give you a list and a sequence. And in pre-K, A list might be the things that we need to create a recipe for cookies. We need flour, we need water, we need eggs. A sequence is the way we're going to do it. First, we're going to do this. Next, we're going to do this. A sequence is more complex than a list, but both of them could be handled by a child who can provide an action sequence in a narrative. This is an example of a list map from the theme maker, which we use to have the children complete, not in complete sentences, but with the information, and then they can use it to turn and talk to each other to plan a paragraph or an essay or something that they're going to say. So here's a sequence map from the theme maker, and it contains the words to begin with, first, next, then, soon after. So those are the cohesive ties that are important for a sequence. Reactive sequence means that there's a kickoff or a cause and a reaction. So in expository text, this is cause-effect. So there's a kickoff and a consequence of that. The abbreviated episode, cause-effect when the effect is a feeling. There are often feelings tied into information text, as I'll show. Cause-effect mapping, you'll see that there are 3 causes here, a list of causes yielding one effect, which is physical weathering. So one of my big points tonight is that something like cause-effect could contain a list. And that's what makes it difficult for our students. A complete episode ties into the problem-solution text structure in information text. Here's the problem-solution text structure from the Boston Tea Party as the topic, the colonists' point of view, and the British reaction to the Boston Tea Party, taken from a social studies text. Your keywords are there, and usual cohesive ties. The complex episode, which means in narrative development that there's a new kickoff, and the interactive episode, where the kickoff by someone gives rise to a feeling and a plan by someone else. Both of those enable a person to begin to persuade, to take the perspective of the person who is either that you're trying to convince, either through persuasion or through argument. Now you're going to notice that the critical thinking triangle is the vehicle for argument. Paying attention to the kickoff, which would be whatever's the topic going to be argued about, feelings of both parties, and then how both parties create plans. This is an argument map from the theme maker. We have to get the issue, and the issue often arises from a problem that occurs somewhere, and there's a solution according to one group of people, but another group of people may have a totally different solution, and then hence begins the argument. So these are the reasons followed by evidence. So one of the things that I like to do with children is to practice with ads and headlines. I became to know that headlines in the real newspaper are put on by the editors, not by the person who writes the article. So if the article that is written is not clear, the wrong headline might go on. So headlines are very important. And here's Prevention Magazine. And here are a few things that would relate to expository text. 10 ways to lose weight and keep it off. That is a list. Summer special, light and easy, no-cook meals. That could be a solution to a problem on a hot night, or it could be a sequence. Is your water safe to drink? That's a problem. And maybe we're arguing one point or the other. Burn fat faster, our 8-week walking plan, which is probably a sequence. Slaughter in the jungle. This is a problem. maybe there are people who don't recognize it, and we may want to convince them, persuade them, or argue our point. Drought could mean drab fall was the headline involving this pictorial expository text. So it's drought affecting fall color, normal weather conditions versus drought conditions. And what is it? It's a listing of the types of leaves that are in each condition, but sequencing according to the amount of water that they have. So there's cause effect, there's compare contrast, there's sequencing, there's listing, there's all of the text structures. This lets you know how long I've been doing this because the date line is 2004. Roadkill on the rise as squirrel numbers grow. So this is cause effect. Increase in squirrel numbers yields what? Roadkill, a lot of roadkill. Is that a problem? Maybe it was in Northampton, Mass at the time. Here is a Liberty Mutual ad. We share space here in our building with Liberty Mutual, and we just happened to see this ad because it contains all of the text structures. So whenever you see an ad, you'll want to be analyzing it from this moment on.
Okay. Sorry, we just have to make a couple of adjustments here for you to be able to hear it. So, okay.
So I'd like you to notice the text structures that are in here.
Just a minute. Okay.
You do all this research on the perfect car, gas mileage, horsepower, torque ratios. 3 spreadsheets later, you finally bring home the one, then smash it into a tree. Your insurance company's all too happy to raise your rates. Maybe you should have done a little more research on them.
For drivers with accident forgiveness, Liberty Mutual won't raise your rates due to your first accident. Liberty stands with you. Liberty Mutual Insurance.
Okay, let me fix this. Okay.
So all ads like that are to persuade and argue a point. This one also had a list. Research on the perfect car. What were the 3 things she listed? Gas mileage, horsepower, and torque ratio, whatever that is. 3 spreadsheets later, that's the sequence that she was doing. 3 spreadsheets later. Cause effect, smashing car into a tree caused her insurance company to raise her rate. That became a problem for her, which she researched and found Liberty Mutual's accident forgiveness. How did she do that? Her steps to get to the consequence there were by comparing and contrasting insurance companies' policies. So anything as simple and as clever as an ad on TV like this involves the text structures that you might want to have students analyze. So we're brought to the text structures and the topic that we decided on tonight. This story was in the Boston Globe, and if you look at it, it's May 10th, 2017. West Springfield is the next town to us. And this is about an alligator that a person had raised in his backyard, and then it was taken by a zoo. And it finally died. So this was the story about that, which made us interested in maybe looking at Shel Silverstein's poem, The Crocodile's Toothache, which that alligator story triggered in my mind. I used to read these stories to my children. So I'm going to read this to you. Now this is a narrative poem. In other words, it has a narrative structure. It's from the crocodile's point of view. But Shel Silverstein had to know information text in order to structure his content. Oh, the crocodile went to the dentist, and he sat down in the chair. And the dentist said, "Now tell me, sir, why does it hurt and where?" And the crocodile said, "I'll tell you the truth. I have a terrible ache in my tooth." And he opened his jaws so wide that the dentist, he climbed right inside. And the dentist laughed, "Oh, isn't this fun?" as he pulled the teeth out one by one. And the crocodile cried, "You're hurting me so. Please, put down your pliers and let me go." But the dentist just laughed with a ho, 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 and he said, "I still have 12 to go." Whoops, that's the wrong one, I confess. But what's one crocodile's tooth? More or less. Then suddenly the jaws went snap, and the dentist was gone right off the map. And where he went one only could guess, to the north or south, or east or west. He left no forwarding address. But what's one dentist, more or less? So this was created to be humorous, to be kind of wild. And the crocodile being the character, you can see in the background where we've put very faintly our icons. There were two characters in this poem, the crocodile and the dentist. The setting was at the dentist. And when you go to the dentist, as you could bring in your own personal experiences, the dentist will always say, "Why does it hurt and where?" And then you tell the dentist what happens and you open your mouth. So that's part of the setting. That's why knowing the setting is very, very important. The kickoff is actually that the dentist climbed right inside and started to pull the teeth out one by one. We have to infer, after the crocodile feeling that it was hurting him so, that he wanted to make the dentist stop. So we infer the plan, and if you know there should be a plan after a feeling, then you know about inferring it. So he asked him to put down the pliers, but the dentist did not. And so his powerful jaws went snap, and the dentist was gone right off the map. So did he get the dentist to stop pulling his teeth out? Yes, he did. So we thought we'd look at crocodiles. And so from National Geographic, here's a few fast facts about crocodiles, including how much they weigh, what the size is. This is all information, and this would be listed under facts or description of a crocodile. Also from National Geographic is these two paragraphs. And when we did a lexile count, it came out to 1380, which would be around 11th grade. So the vocabulary and the sentence structure are high level in this. Just to read it, we'd like you to help me pick out the text structures. The American crocodile is considered an endangered species in nearly all parts of Central, North, and South American, of its North, Central, and South American range. So what is that? It's a description of the setting or the habitat. Survey data, except in the United States, is poor or non-existent, but conservationists agree that illegal hunting and habitat depletion has reduced populations of this wide-ranging reptile to critical levels. So this is what? Cause, effect. The cause is illegal hunting and habitat depletion. What's the effect? Reduced populations.
What is that? Could you go a little slower on this part?
Okay. And as we're looking at that, and we've got a reduced population, that is a problem to conservationists and environmentalists. A small remnant population lives in southern Florida, but most are found in southern Mexico, Central America, the Caribbean, and northern South America. So what is that? That's a list. Their habitat of choice is the fresh or brackish water of river estuaries, coastal lagoons, and mangrove swamps. The reference for this is at the bottom. So that's a list again. So in this, there are 5 different text structures that students have to be aware of if they're going to comprehend this. And then you noticed that we underlined in blue words that we'd consider tier 2 words: conservationist, habitat depletion, wide-ranging remnant, estuaries, brackish, mangrove swamps. Some of them, like brackish water, may be something that would be a tier 3 vocabulary word. So there are vocabulary words that should be looked at in this. And I wanted you to notice that survey data, the second sentence where it says survey data, comma, except in the United States, comma, is poor or non-existent. Except in the United States separates survey data from the verb is. So a lot of children don't follow that because of the embedded phrases or clauses that are evident in expository text. This follows along, and it starts out: a prehistoric looking creature. It is distinguishable from its cousin, the American alligator, by its longer, thinner snout, its lighter color, and 2 long teeth on the lower jaw that are visible when its mouth is closed. So what is this? This is description, but it's what? Compare and contrasting. The alligator has a fatter snout, is darker in color, and has more teeth on the lower, fewer teeth on the lower jaw that are visible. So we're looking at description, compare and contrast. We're also looking at, instead of calling it a crocodile, they're referring to it as a prehistoric looking creature. It is distinguishable from its cousin, the American alligator. So that's a referent, which a lot of our students have difficulty connecting to the topic, and they lose the sense of the article. This species is among the largest of the world's crocodiles, with Central and South American males reaching lengths of up to 20 feet. Males in the U.S. population rarely exceed 13 feet, however. This is a description. So you're going to notice as you deal with information or expository text that it would be great if every paragraph was a description or a list or a sequence, but usually they're a combination of 2 or more text structures. Their diet consists of small mammals, birds, fish, crabs, insects, snails, frogs, and occasionally carrion. They've been known to attack people, but are far more likely to flee at the sight of humans. That's part of their description. Most countries in the American crocodile's range have passed protection laws, but unfortunately, few governments provide adequate enforcement. So perhaps there has to be some persuasion and an argument made as far as protecting these animals. So in these 2 paragraphs, we have description several times, we have compare, contrast, we have a list, and we have the reason to persuade. We've also underlined some of these words as well: distinguishable, prehistoric, and carrion. So in keeping with taking a vocabulary word, we thought we would take the word bask and we would show how it was treated in several picture books related to crocodiles, because crocodiles bask in the sun to warm up. Merriam-Webster is the source. Bask is a verb: to lie exposed to warmth and light, typically from the sun, for relaxation and pleasure. Kind of sounds like us on the beach. Synonyms are to laze, loll. Antonyms are to hide, hustle, plod. The second definition is to revel in and make the most of something pleasing. So here's some alligators basking, and here are Patriots players, Brady and Belichick, basking in the coach in another Super Bowl trip. In disciplinary literacy, there are calls for academic vocabulary as a focus. Bask, in relation to the crocodile, reflects the basic meaning because crocodiles are cold-blooded, so they must bask in the warmth to be able to live. So here we have cause-effect. If a cold-blooded animal is cold-blooded, then he must bask. Basking causes adequate temperature for living, which is cause-effect, as well as the fact that basking is a solution to a biological problem. As we were doing this, we came across another meaning of bask. And we found that on this great, awesome, 8 Awesome website, which the reference is at the bottom, there is a bask of crocodiles, which is a group of crocodiles, similar to a pride of lions or a gaggle of geese. So I wanted you to look now at 3 segments taken from 3 of the books that are included in your reference list in your bibliography. This one is Crocodile Safari. Each of them shows a picture of a crocodile basking. This one just talks about the process of basking without naming the word. It was resting on a long grassy bank with its mouth opened wide to warm its powerful jaw muscles in the sun. This one is from Crocodiles. Crocodiles are reptiles. There's a little more text here, and the word bask is used. They cannot keep warm like we can. They need to bask in the sun every morning to warm up. Sometimes they bask with their mouths open. And then the third one is by Judith Django Cohen, and it's entitled Crocodiles. There's the crocodile basking. The word crocodilians is used. The word cold-blooded is used. Unlike humans and other warm-blooded animals, they cannot produce body heat from the energy in their food, so there's contrasting. They heat their bodies using only the warmth from their surroundings. If the temperature is rising too high, they may move to the shade. When it's dropping too low, they may bask in the sun. So there's cause-effect. So in that little paragraph, there are several things. There's description, there's compare-contrast, there's cause-effect. I asked my grandson, Jerry, who's 7, to create a vocabulary card for the word bask. And many of you who've been in the business a long time have used the Freyer model for creating vocabulary cards. Well, there was an article in the Reading Teacher by Gallagher and Anderson, which was entitled Get All Jazzed Up for Vocabulary Instruction, about strategies that engage students. And besides dividing the vocabulary card up into 4 sections, they advocated having the child draw a graffiti drawing about the word itself. So here's Jerry's graffiti drawing. Up on the upper left-hand corner, he has the definition. Upper right-hand is the antonym. Lower left-hand is a sentence, and the lower right-hand is a picture. So it's the Freyer model, which was 1969, brought up to 2016 for engagement. So one of the things that we asked you to download or to make a copy of is my research little booklet that we've used very successfully to acquaint children with how to get evidence out of picture books, almost in preparation for DBQs or document-based questions. And the bullets that I have here are things that can be done with the little research booklet. Point to the text structures in the booklet. In other words, take a text structure walk with this little booklet itself. Apply knowledge of the text structure identification. Think about and answer text-based questions, because that's what this booklet is for. Cite specific information and record page numbers. And what is that? That's evidence from the text. Turn and talk and compare and contrast answers with the partner. Now, if you looked through the Alligator and Crocodile book by Gale Gibbons, and I did, some of our answers in here would be different because we may find a different list or a different something that we didn't know about the topic. And then the final one is to be able to present information to large or small groups. So this is the Alligator and Crocodile book by Gale Gibbons. This is one of the pages I mentioned to you before, what wonderful illustrations were here. So this one is a compare contrast page, really contrasting the differences. That's a contrast between the American alligator and the American crocodile. And it's probably more than you'd ever want to know. So in the little booklet, this is how we went through that book and compiled our little booklet. On page 1, if you want to write it in now, you could, or you could look at it later as you're reviewing the PowerPoint. But we check the title or the topic, because it's not a title of something, it's a topic. And what was it? Was it a person, an animal, a time, a place, an event, or an era? You'll notice that the topic icon that I'm going to talk about in a minute is a combination of a character outline and a star, because the topic is usually about a character or an era. Reptiles, okay, list 2 or 3 facts you already know about crocodiles. So they're reptiles, they're different from alligators, and they live on land and water. We already knew that. Young crocodiles eat fish, frogs, and birds, and we found that on page 13. So you see, it's helping them to get an idea of finding evidence, recording the page, and being able to answer text-based questions. In this one, it's talking about a sequence. It grabs its prey, holds it underwater, rips it apart, and swallows pieces whole. Rather violent, but that's on page 13. Was there cause-effect? Yes or no? Did you find any evidence of that? Yes. Tucked all 4 legs into its body, and the effect is that it swims faster. And the person found that on page 15. Was there a problem? Yes, there were fewer crocodiles in their natural environment due to hunting and building. We found that, or this person did, on page 29. So what are 3 things that the author wanted done? Make it illegal to hunt them, construct wildlife preserves, and respect crocodiles. So what are the things we could do? We could enforce laws, raise money for wildlife preserves, and make people aware that they should respect crocodiles. Do you agree with the author's steps to a solution? In other words, the author's point of view that the author seemed to communicate. That's what we want kids to know, yes or no. And then, could you answer this question? Crocodiles should be protected in their environment. So that is a text-based question. So this little booklet has been huge in our introduction to information text. And the kids love it, and I think you'd love it because you'd get evidence here. And the kids love to compare and contrast what they found in the book that was different from what somebody else found. So I did want to mention the magnets also. And these are all our different products that we have and our different tools that are related to Story Grammar Marker from 1991 to the present day. But I wanted to mention about the use of magnets. One of the prizes tonight is a set of magnets. And some of you may be anxious to get something like that. So I just thought I'd show this.
Okay.
If you could direct that.
Okay.
So up here, just 1 second. Now I'm varying from my screen over here. So I'd just like to know
Make
if
sure
you
you
can
talk
see
loud
me.
enough because.
So here I've used a magnet, which is the purpose, the hand. It's really a plan. What's the purpose of the author? So I'm taking a topic of hurricanes. So the purpose of the author is not to tell a story. It's to provide information. And so what am I doing? I'm looking at probably an area that a hurricane occurred. That would be the setting. Maybe I'm going to find a list of things. Maybe I'm going to find a sequence of things. Maybe, and most probably, I'm going to find cause-effect, which is the basic text structure of what I'm going to tell you about, which maybe will lead to a problem. So just as we went through those paragraphs in the webinar on the crocodile, I'm changing it now to a paragraph on a hurricane that I might see in a science book. So I've got a hurricane happening in an area. There are a list of things, there could be a sequence of things that are on TV about it. But in my paragraph, I find out that hurricanes cause many things. So as I'm reading the paragraph ahead of the children, I'm realizing that there are 3 causes that one hurricane, causes 3 things. So hurricanes cause power outages, and I might write PO for power outage here. I would write the word. Hurricanes cause flooding. Hurricanes cause trees to fall. So what did I determine here? I determined that there were a list of effects. This is very powerful for the students. They'll often go, because they see cause, effect, and actually there are 3 effects that are listed, but there's only one cause. What's the cause? The hurricane. So the hurricane caused these 3 things, and then that may be a text-based question. List the effects of a hurricane. However, if this happened in real life, I may have a problem. In other words, if the tree fell on my house, that would be a kickoff for me. How would I feel about it? I would be devastated. I would do a lot of thinking. These are my thought bubble words. I would remember what had happened in the past when I had an emergency. And I would make a plan to do things. First, here's where I have a sequence now. First, I would call the police. Next, I would call the insurance company. And I would proceed to do that until I solved my problem. So, what started out in the science book as a cause-effect paragraph is cause-effect. It's also a list. It's also a problem, and it's also a sequence. So we can show that to the kids with the magnets as we, of course, prepare it ahead of time. So I just thought you'd like to see this actually done out. And I think that's about it.
Well, we've got a few more things. Okay. So, okay. Sorry, I'm sorry that that was so shaky when I, okay, this is better. Okay. I'm sorry that was so shaky. It kind of caught me off guard, and I meant to have the tripod set up and I did not. So another technical problem for this evening. So thank you so much for all of you who have bared with us. It's we've got almost everybody who's still on, so thank you. Thank you for joining us for this free webinar. In this webinar, just as a recap, Mary Ellen showed how to apply MindWings icons to the 7 expository text structures. Just so you know, we present 2 days on this topic. 1 day sometimes, it's possible to do it in 1 day, but we just did this in an hour. So just imagine that every aspect of what we just talked about would be multiplied by an hour. So it would really be a 6-hour or even a 12-hour workshop that we just kind of condense the main points to give you an idea and some real concrete information about expository or information text. So just to give you another reference, this is just a picture of our website. If you go on to mindwingconcepts.com, we have a blog. And if you click on that blog, you'll see something that says categories. And if you click on expository, you will get multiple lessons that are free that you can download that focus on expository text. Another place to click is learning resources, and there'll be a drop down that says free lessons. And that's another great place for you to go to kind of search out other expository text lessons and really any lessons, but since the focus of this is on expository text. Now, we always like to give our attendees a special offer. So people that attended live tonight, we will give you a 25% off special code. It's EXP for expository, EXP25. It's good until midnight Pacific time, so I know we have people in different time zones. And and then we also have a 10% off. If you're not watching live, you still get a 10% discount until May 31st at midnight Pacific time, and that's code EXP10 at checkout. So if you visit mindwingconcepts.com and search Theme Maker, you'll be brought to all of the materials that are related to this webinar. I'm just going to show you a couple of them that we would recommend. The first is, of course, the Theme Maker kit, because that has all of the materials you need, from the large posters, the mini posters, the teacher-sized story grammar marker, the magnets, the Theme Maker tools, the manual that has all of the maps in it, various versions of the map, some for young children, some for older students. We can show those in a minute. This kit is regularly $174.95. You can get it tonight before midnight for $131.21, which is a great discount. The next one is the Theme Maker manual. And the manual, it has all of our maps, and it has all of the lessons and anything else you'd want to be able to do with Theme Maker, and all of the research base as well. And so it's a great companion to what we did tonight. And that's $65 normally, but before midnight it is $48.75. So that's another great deal. And then our magnets, which Mary Ellen just showed, they're called universal magnets because they can be used with both narrative and expository. All of the components of narrative development and the narrative episode are in the magnets as well. So you can use it for narrative or expository. And tonight it's basically $10 off, which is great. $29.96 you can get the magnets for if you don't already have them. So that gives you kind of 3 price ranges. If you're trying to think of this is great information, but how do I implement it with fidelity, and how do I implement it effectively without having to come up with a bunch of things? These 3 sort of price points, we're trying to help you to kind of get started, or if you already use it, to be able to add to your collection. So now we will choose raffle winners, and I've got an app on my phone. So I am going to go through that right now, and please email me. I'm going to write down your name so that I know who won, if I can find a pen. Of course, we don't have a pen at Mary Ellen's desk. So the first winner is, and this is for the grand prize, which is, sorry, the grand prize, which is the magnet set, which is the value of $40, and that is going to be, sorry, I'm clicking on my app here, and it's going to be, click on my app, and that's Melissa Swartz. Melissa Swartz, S-W-A-R-T-Z. And congratulations, you won the magnet set. the next prize is going to be the large theme maker poster, and with all the text structures of the theme maker. And I'm just getting over here, and that is going to be Abby Britt. Abby, so congratulations, Abby. And the, let's see, there we go. And then the and then the third prize is the theme maker tool, which each student gets with the theme maker kit. And this is a two-sided, it's got a pocket here. It's with the inferencing and critical thinking triangle included, along with the theme maker. And this is, oh, this is funny. This person has asked a couple of questions through the webinar. Hannah Agustin, I think is how she pronounces her name. Hannah Agoston. Hannah Agustin. So Hannah, congratulations. We'll be sending you this. And let's get to, so we're going to get to the questions that Mary Ellen has. So I'm going to have Mary Ellen coming back and sit here. If you're wondering about the recording of the webinar is going to be emailed to you tomorrow in case you missed part of it or weren't able to focus because of our unfortunate technology problems. And I really apologize. We work so hard on these webinars, and we try to improve every time, and we try to improve with both content and technology. And we have a new system, and we tested it with multiple things that we did last week, and we did not have a problem. So of course tonight when we're sitting in front of all of you, we did. So thank you so much for bearing with us. Mary Ellen's going to answer the questions now that people asked along the way, and we will see you. Let's see, our next one in June, our next webinar in June is going to be Mary Ellen's favorite books to use with Story Grammar Marker. And we're going to have a downloadable available. I think it's going to be really great. And we're trying to do something a little bit more lighthearted and fun, but still with fantastic content, because it's sort of winding down to the end of the school year by June, and some of you will already even be out of school. And then over the summer, we'll do a couple of those others that we talked about. So Mary Ellen's going to come back. Again, I thank you, and I apologize for the technical problems. So I'll just read the questions and then you can answer. Sorry.
Thank you, Sheila.
Okay. So, all right.
Okay.
Let's go back to.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay. So, all right. So some. Okay, we had a lot of questions about the audio. Let's see. Okay, audio. I'm just clicking through. Now everyone's better. Okay. Does a student need to understand and use the narrative format well in order to learn and use expository text? And that was asked by Rachel Yea.
As I mentioned, I developed that process of beginning, say, with just a child who's at character setting and actions, being able to do listing and sequencing from expository text. So in that case, a child wouldn't have perfect use of a narrative, but they might be younger, and for them, character setting and actions is a good place to be. As children get older, as students get older, there's a necessity to be able to be at the complete episode level. Not when they're younger. When they're younger, it's great to introduce listing, sequencing, cause effect as you're going through stories, because stories will have information text in them. But then there are also all those wonderful information text books and authors that our classrooms are full of now. So as children get older, it's very important for them to be able to take perspective, which is a narrative skill, to be able to take perspective. I begin that by asking them to take both Stellaluna and her mother's perspective in that story, for instance. So we work on perspective early on, so they are prepared when it comes to persuasion and argument to notice another character's perspective and be able to argue one's own point, knowing that somebody else thinks something different. So in the long run, you don't have to be a wonderful narrative user to begin to use expository text, but the high levels of information text, problem solution, persuasion, and argument depend on narrative skills.
Okay. The next one is there a developmental order for understanding these expository maps? And I think that was Leah Ambrose who asked that question. I think you covered that. I think she asked that question before you went into the development. So I think that was answered.
I wanted to mention that it's not written somewhere in a textbook, developmental order of information text. It's something that was evident to me. So it's part of my evidence base. I looked at it and I thought, you know, it's kind of similar. If you get to an action sequence, you should be able to list and sequence. And my students were able to do that. So that's where I found the developmental sequence type of thing. But there is a tie-in, and there's more and more research on that, a tie-in between narrative and information.
And then the next one is, why did you move compare contrast text earlier in the developmental sequence from the original material? So this is someone who, this is Kristen Mentrikowski, and obviously Kristen must have been using these materials for a long time because she noticed this, and it's something that I actually asked that same question recently. I'm just going to go back to that. You want to start talking?
You know why? At the beginning, when we made our charts in 1995, we put compare contrast at the bottom because it took up the most space. And we figured you could compare and contrast anything there. Plus, the compare contrast that we wanted to do was in boxes rather than a Venn diagram, because so many of our students could not do the Venn diagram, and they were okay with how things were different, but they could never fit how things were the same inside. So we wanted it in boxes. And then it became evident that maybe I should put a space for criteria that was being compared and contrasted. So early on, it was just a matter of the fact that compare contrast took up a lot of space. And now there's been my own research that told me, as I watched children do this, that children began to compare and contrast very early. And it was usually with characters and settings similar to my 3-year-old granddaughter, Casey, today with the puppies. So that's why it's up further toward the beginning of the chart, bearing in mind that if you're familiar with the narrative structures, you say to yourself, wow, there is kind of a developmental sequence here. I wonder if I can help kids learn the earlier ones first so they aren't deluged by everything as they get older. So that's why.
Okay, and then the next one I think is also from Kristen Metrikowski. Do you use the same maps with students who are not yet fluent readers and writers but should be working at this level given their language skills?
Yeah, I do. They may not be fluent readers and writers, but you know, one of the things that was evident to me working with children who had dyslexia, who were diagnosed with dyslexia, They had problems decoding and were not fluent, yet their thinking was just wonderful. And if we could help them organize their thinking, there was going to be a reciprocal effect. They would still be able to tell about a story that they heard read to them. And as they got more fluent, they would have the tools, the text structures, whether narrative or information text, to be able to communicate the information. So yes, even though children are not reading up to grade level, I would still use these text structures.
And I think too, the same map, the question too she had was about the maps. Sorry, now
Okay.
I'm edging you over,
Yep.
sorry. But
The same maps.
But this week we did a workshop that was on Brady with expository text. And one of the things we talked about, for example, with description, in the Brady manual, there's a setting map, and it really just has, there's a space for children to draw. And so for describing a setting, if you don't have the language skills and you're young,
yeah.
for very young students.
Or for somebody who has an impairment of some kind that you're working with, you can just have them draw. Draw a setting, and you can tell so much from drawing. Have them do stick figures. There's so many things that can be done through drawing.
And the other thing, the other thing about our maps, and I don't know if you can see this, but this is our map for cause and effect, for example, that's in the Theme Maker manual, okay? So take a look at that. I know this is kind of hard to see on here. There's that one, but then we also have in the back another version of it. And this is for older students who might not want those big icons. Do you see how they're kind of grayscale? And I'm trying to get the best view here. How they're kind of grayscaled out, but they're the same basic style of a map. It's just that we created them for older students who might not want it to be visible from another student to see that they're using this special map. So we do actually have varied maps in the Theme Maker manual for those particular reasons.
One of the things I like to do early on is to use this chart and read paragraphs to kids and ask them to put a token or a penny or something in the box that they heard a text structure that they heard in my passage. So if they heard a list or a sequence, they put their token there. It's great fun to do in pairs, and kids talk about them, talk about the text structures. So there are a lot of ideas like that in the manuals and on our website.
Okay, and then Rachel also asked this question. When guiding a student how to write something like the crocodile facts, is there a recommended order, for example, description, list, then problem, solution, or how would you address that?
Well, oftentimes I begin with a list. You know, it's a description is a group of lists sometime. If you notice the one that I showed that had the amphibians on it, the formal map that I showed, each section was a list of attributes of that particular animal. So I begin with the list, and if I say was given the topic of a fish, I'd look for 5 attributes of the fish, and that would be part of my description of the amphibian map. So I begin with list and sequence, and I talk to the kids about how a sequence requires more thinking than a list does. You can have a sequence for a recipe. How about a science experiment? You can have a list of things you need for the science experiment, but the sequence is going to be what really makes or breaks the science experiment. Same thing with an art project. A list of the things that you need and a sequence of how you're going to draw the picture. So I begin with listing and sequencing, turn it into a description, and proceed from there. The causal chain, cause-effect, of course, is a problem for many of our students. So that is the same as it is in narrative. If the child doesn't get the kickoff in a story, he's not quite there yet with the causal chain. So begin with listing and sequencing and proceed.
Okay, and then how much of a grasp on the story grammar components does a student need to really start using this? I feel like I would need to do a lot of pre-teaching to really utilize this. Is this your experience? And that's a question by Susan Bahadori, who we know.
We have to practice. It's often that kids are given a text structure map, and they're given the directive to use this to organize their thoughts. There has to be practice done, a lot of pre-teaching. As you go on through the years and you're doing narrative development with story grammar marker, and you have children who are able to pick out a kickoff, you know that they're ready to list, they're ready to sequence, and they're ready to give cause effect and probably compare contrast. And you can pull these aspects out for them. But yes, it requires, it requires pre-teaching, but it requires practice and modeling. So.
Okay. And then the next one, would you recommend it? Well, I think you probably just answered it, but would you recommend getting comfortable using SGM first with narratives? And you kind of just answered that question.
You know, there are a lot of kids who look as if they can't tell a story. They require you to ask them all the questions to pull out the information, but many of them just need a model. So a few times with story grammar marker as a tool where they see all of those icons together will be all that they might need. And then you can get into expository text. I'm just, you know, in my evidence base for this, as I traveled these 45 years, it was just very obvious to me that when it came time for information text, a lot of children lost interest, were afraid, didn't know what to do, just sat there. So it's important as early as we can. And, you know, in the Common Core, it talks about opinion very, very early, giving opinions, using the word because. So a simple opinion early on is not like having to write or speak about persuasion and argument later on. So the Common Core is asking us to teach these things earlier. And what I presented tonight was kind of a way to do it. But yes, it takes practice, and yes, it takes pre-teaching. But just choose a Gale Gibbons book, a topic, and choose 2 or 3 pages and ask the kids to be thinking with you. Is it a list? Is it a sequence? Just limit it to those 2 types of structures. Okay.
Okay. And then this is a good one, actually. Kim Bender asked, when we actually had a workshop on this topic, a webinar, I think, that we did a while ago. But it's, do you recommend teaching narrative and expository text at the same time, maybe using paired readings? And we should probably redo that webinar because that's a great question,
yes,
Kim.
Paired reading, so a narrative and information text about the same thing. Kind of, we did pair that a little bit tonight using Shel Silverstein, a narrative poem, and the Gale Gibbons book on the crocodile. But we did a lot with that, and there are more and more of those books in the classrooms. So that's great to do that.
Okay. And that's kind of how you do all of your workshops. You
Right.
pair everything together.
And I pair them, but I also am very it's very well known to me that any author who writes a wonderful novel has incorporated information text into their novel. So, you know, we could look at that.
Okay. Another question, and this is from Rivka. At what age would you introduce cohesive ties and expect them to use them?
Well, you know, cohesive ties, we want children to use the basic cohesive ties that are on the story grammar marker developmental sequence when that sequence is mastered. So character and setting, the cohesive tie is and. Character, setting, and actions, the cohesive ties are first, next, after that, then, and finally. The faster kids use cohesive ties, the better, because they're developing their sentence structures. You model. The student maybe can put together 3 actions in a sequence, but hasn't got the cohesive ties yet. And you say to yourself, okay, they're sequencing the actions in the story. Now I've got to really persist in getting them to use the cohesive ties. So, you know, what makes a very good narrative is having the cohesive ties. What makes a good paragraph or theme is using the words that are on the theme maker tool.
Okay. And this one last question from Hannah, one of our winners. I have high schoolers. Do you have any recommendations of where to start with these kids? Many do not have narratives established.
Mm-hmm. Well, the complete episode. If you start with them with the complete episode and getting them to be able to, a lot of them, if they don't have narrative, they probably don't have personal narratives either, which is a huge area that I'm very, very interested in, the development of personal narratives to empower children to be able to talk about what has happened to them and where they are in their lives. So if they don't have narrative, they probably don't have that either. So to get to the complete episode with them and then use that complete episode to problem solve, to talk about problem solving, to talk about how a scientist may have tried to problem solve, to talk about a current event. And in a current event, there are always people trying to problem solve. In a historical recount, there are world leaders who are looking at problems, who have feelings about them, who think about them a lot, who make plans. They carry out their plans and they arrive at a consequence. Sometimes the consequence is not what they wanted, so they come back up and change their plan. Those kids in high school, if they could know that. And, you know, the story grammar marker itself has been used with older children. It depends on how you present it, but the magnets are very good to use with older students. Some of them don't like to hold the actual marker itself, but the holding of the marker gives them the kinesthetic awareness.
Okay, I think that's about all, and a lot of people have written just to thank you so much. They've learned so many things. They always learn something new. We love to hear that feedback, so thank you so much. And a couple people did ask what app I use to pick the winner, and it's called, I don't know if you can see it, Random Name Picker. Oh, wait a minute. That's what it looks like. You can, so it's kind of tricky because I have to while I'm on the webinar, I have to upload the spreadsheet of the list of attendees who are still on and then upload it into my phone. It's a little cumbersome, but it works. And then two other people actually asked for me to post again the webinar, the discounts. So that's the 25% off. It's EXP 25 and the 10. That's just until midnight, and then Pacific, and then the EXP 10 is the discount code at checkout. That would be until May 31st. So I think that's about it. And okay, I guess we're having trouble with audio again, but it's a good thing that we're done. So Thank you so much again. Thank you for bearing with